My own dearest Elizabeth, I have your last letter by me as I write, and there are lines in it that I've gone over again and again in the quiet hours when the camp is still. It did me good to hear of you and to know you hold fast to faith and hope, for there are days here when a man must lean upon the love of those at home. I'm still spared in health, thanks be to God, and I pray that these few lines may find you not overborne, but upheld in body and spirit. I was much relieved to learn that you did as entreated and took counsel of the position, or at least made Ray do so if you find your cough not mending. I know you are apt to make light of your own ailments and think it a small matter so long as you can stand upon your feet and keep your hands busy. Yet I would have you remember that your life is more precious to me than I can set down in words, and I cannot bear the thought of your suffering in silence for want of care. If the physician has given you any instruction, I beg you to follow it, whether it be rest or some simple draught or keeping within doors when the air is raw. It eases me more than you can know to think of you taking such pains with yourself as you would take for anyone you love. You wrote also those same good words again. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. And you said that when your mind grows troubled, you repeat them as you go about the house. I have done the same. I do not pretend to you, my dear one, that my mind is always firm, for there are hours when a great heaviness would fain settle upon a man, and he feels as if he had only strength to sit, stare, and let the world go by. Yet I have found, as you wrote, that when one brings such thoughts to the Lord, and does not nurse them alone, they lose some of their power. Since last I wrote, matters here have been more unsettled than they were, and I will tell you why. For some days before the affair of the 5th, there was much talk along the line of small parties of the enemy showing themselves upon the opposite bank, and pickets fired upon at points above and below. It's mostly rumor and uncertain report, yet it kept us in readiness, so that a man scarce laid his head down without thinking he might be called up before morning. At length, the thing came in earnest, without an hour late. On the 5th of this month, just at the edge of day, we were roused in earnest. The alarm was given suddenly, when the long roll beat so sharply that it seemed to strike a man's heart as well as its ear. We fell in with what haste we could, some scarce having time to swallow a mouthful, and ordered out toward the river road, where it was said the Federals had made a dash. I cannot tell you exactly how many they were, for in such a time every report grows in the telling, and one man will swear there were hundreds, while another says it was but a handful. This much is true, that there was brisk firing, and for a little while we were under as hot a fire as ever I cared to stand in again. The ground where we took our place lay uneven, with low spots and scrap timber, and beyond that the darker line of heavier woods. The morning was cold and clear. There was a thin mist at first, which soon lifted, and then the smoke of the guns hung in its stead. We formed as we were directed, and the firing began in earnest. The sound of it in the open air is the thing that no man forgets. The report of a rifle is sharp at any time. When it runs along the line one after another, it becomes like tearing cloth, and the balls make that wicked scene as it pass. I do not write these particulars to distress you, but only that you may know I speak of what I've seen, and not of some tale told by others. Caleb was near me, as he is most times when it can be managed, and I thank God for that. For there is a comfort in seeing a known face at such moments. He looked very pale when the first volleys came in, yet he did not fail in his duty, and I did not see his hand tremble. We were ordered to hold our ground for a time, then to fall back a little by companies, keeping up our fire as we went. It was confusion, yet not the wild confusion of a rout, for the officers were in their places and the men obeyed as well as they could. There were cries and calls, and more than one poor fellow went down. Some struck and some stumbling on the rough ground. And it is a hard thing to know, when you see a man fall, whether he will rise again. What has troubled me most in thinking back upon that day is not only the sight of men wounded and dying. War has those horrors always, but the manner in which some of our own behaved under the fire. I do not mean those who were frightened, for fear is common to all, and a brave man is not one who feels nothing, but one who does his duty in spite of what he feels. I mean rather those who have grown so quiet of late that one might scarce draw a word from them by the fire, and who now, in the midst of danger, showed a steadiness that was not like courage. There were two in our line whom I have long marked as being of that still kind. Men who used once to laugh and speak as freely as any, but have of late sat apart and looked upon the ground, answering in short words as if speech were a burden. When the firing began, most of us took what cover we could, lying down where the ground allowed or sheltering behind a tree and rising to fire when we ordered killing. Those two did not do as the rest. One stood in the open longer than was wise, firing with a slow regularity, loading and ramming as if he were alone on drill. A ball struck the earth near his feet and threw dirt upon his leggings, yet he did not start, nor did he look down. Another man cried to him to get under cover. Did not seem to hear. He only loaded and fired again. The other, who was nearer to me, moved at every order with a promptness that would have pleased any officer, and he did not so much as glance to right or left to see who was down or who needed help. He kept his face turned forward and his eyes fixed in that hollow way I've seen at night by the fire. I watched him more than once when the line shifted and the smoke was thick, and it came upon me like a chill, but he did not look as if he cared whether he lived or died, only that he should keep doing what was set before him. If he had been a man carried by a great passion, one could understand it, but there was no passion in him, only a kind of emptiness and obedience. At one point, a man near us was struck in the shoulder and fell with a cry. Caleb and I both started toward him, for he was of our mess and had eaten at our fire not 3 nights before. As we went, one of those quiet men stepped over him, as if he were a log. Not in cruelty, for he did not kick him nor curse him, but as if he did not register what lay in his path. I cannot put it plainer than that. It was as though the sight of suffering did not touch him, or as if there were in him nothing left to be touched. We did what we could for the wounded, while the firing allowed. When there was a lull, we carried some back to a safer place, and those who could walk were helped along. I saw one poor boy, scarcely more than a child, stand up in the smoke with his mouth open as if he wished to speak, and no word came. Another man seized him by the collar and dragged him down, and I think that act saved his life. Later, when it was more quiet, the boy could not remember what had happened to him in those moments. He only said he felt as if he had been asleep with his eyes open. We lost several, and some were wounded badly. The man I spoke of from our mess, his name's Willis, was struck and died before we could do anything for him. I did not write you his full name, for I did not know whether his people have yet been informed, and I would not have my letter be the first to carry such tidings into a hall. He was a steady fellow, not much given to talking, yet always ready to share his last morsel, and I'd grown used to seeing him about me. It's a strange thing how quickly one misses a man's place, not only in the line, but in all the small movements of camp life. We came back from the affair and the companies were reformed. There was a space where he should have stood. He looked in my eye like a tearing cloth. Afterward, we buried the dead, such as we could recover, in ground that was wet and heavy, so that the spade went in hard one moment and sank the next, and clay clung to our boots as if it meant to keep us there. Chaplain spoke and prayed, and more than one man wept. There is no shame in it. A soldier who never weeps is not made of iron, he's made of stone. Philip stood by me during that, very quiet, with his hat in his hand. He did not cry, yet his face had that look it takes when he's been looking inward. I tried to speak to him after, but he said little. He only told me he was very tired. Since that skirmish, you may be sure, the camp's been much moved. Those who have kin in other commands speak of Prairie Grove still, and now they add this new brush near our own post, as if every month must bring its own share of death. There are men who have begun to start at small sounds, and others seem to have gone the opposite way and do not start at all. The officers have been more strict of late about the picket line, and I do not blame them, for after what has happened with men going missing, now that's dashed by the enemy, there is much cause for vigilance. As for those quiet men of whom I spoke, the ones who fought with that strange calm, I do not know what to think of them. Some say they are the best soldiers in the regiment, for they do not flinch and do not waste motion. One of the officers spoke in their praise, saying he wished he had a whole company of such steady fellows. He meant it as a compliment, no doubt, and perhaps it is so in the eyes of war. Yet it turned my stomach a little, for I've seen that steadiness by the fire in that, and I do not think it is a good thing. I'd rather stand beside a man whose hand shakes, but whose heart is still alive, and beside one who has no fear because he has no feeling left. I do not say these words openly in camp, for I would not have men think me giving a superstitious talk, nor would I spread fear where there is enough already. In my own mind, I cannot help but remember that word I once heard from the Indian, the manner in which he spoke of the thing that makes men hollow while they yet walk. I have not spoken with him again, nor do I seek him out. Yet once, after the firing was over, and we were returning, I saw one of those Indian warriors standing apart, looking upon the line of our men's same grave face I've seen before. It seemed to me that his eyes lingered on the quiet ones, as if he knew them. He did not speak, and I did not. Still, the look stayed with me. You will wish to know how Caleb bore himself under the fire. He did his duty, and I can truly say he did not disgrace himself. Yet I must confess to you, my dear one, that there was in him at one moment something that troubled me. So when the firing was sharpest and a man near us fell, for a brief space Caleb stood very still, not as if he were frightened, but as if his mind had gone elsewhere. I called to him, and he turned his face to me a moment later than I expected, as if coming back from far off. Then he moved at once and helped me, and afterward he spoke as if nothing had happened. Perhaps it was only the shock of seeing a comrade struck down. Yet I've thought of it more than once since, for it put me in mind of the way some look when they sit alone beyond the firelight. Since that day, he's been more silent. He goes about his duties and speaks when spoken to, but he's not beginning to talk as he once did, unless I draw him out. One evening, when I tried to bring him into remembrance of home, he listened and even smiled a little. But it was like a lamp that burned slow, cannot be made to flare without fresh oil. I urged him again to write to his mother, and he said he would, but his pen remains idle. I do not know whether it is grief or weariness, or that strange inward deadness that comes upon some men like a fog. I pray God it may not fasten upon him, for I love him as a brother. For my own part, I've been more watchful of my thoughts since the night I told you of, when a great heaviness came upon me on the watch and urged me to sit down and let all things go. In the midst of the late firing, I felt something of that same weariness for a moment, as if my soul were tempted to lay down in its arms as the body lay down a musket. But I called to mind your words and those scriptures you wrote, and I asked the Lord to sustain me, and I was enabled, by His mercy, to keep my feet. I do not tell you this to make myself appear better than I am, for I am a poor sinner, that you may know how much strength your prayers and your faithful love give me at such times. Do not be overmuch cast down by what I have written, my beloved. There are still many sound men among us, and the Lord has preserved me thus far beyond what I deserve. Yet I would not deceive you. The war has more ways of killing a man than by ball or bayonet. He can wear him out in his body, and he can wear him out in his spirit. And it can make him, while he yet lives, a stranger to himself. When I see that beginning in any gives me more fear than the enemy's fire, it makes me cling more firmly to every good thing that keeps a man human, to prayer, to friendship, and to the thought of home. Continue to write to me when you can, for your letters are a great comfort to me, and I feel steadier for having your words in my hand. Do not overtask yourself, my beloved, or carry your burdens alone if help may be had. But take such rest as you can, and let others do for you when they are willing. Give my love to your mother, and my respectful remembrance to your father. Tell them I strive to do my duty and to keep my mind stayed, as far as I am able, upon the Lord's mercy. Remember me kindly to all neighbors and friends who ask after me, and tell them I am thankful for every prayer that is offered up on my account. I must close now, for the light is low, and we are called early. May the Lord keep you and bless you, and make His face shine upon you, and give you peace. Till it should please God to bring us together again, I remain, as ever, your true and affectionate husband, Nathaniel.